Man cannot live without a pure, clean environment and its denizens. But the planet can survive and even thrive without man. A fine morning in the Himalayas of Kinnaur district. Both Tara and her uncle Yontan Mama are up bright and early, eager to be regaled by Charu Chachi's vast knowledge of the environment and about nature at large. Polly is busy feasting on the apricots from the apricot trees.
Good morning, Charu Chachi. Look at Polly enjoying the apricots to his heart's delight.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, all the apricot trees are suddenly in full bloom, much to Polly's delight. Later in the day, maybe you can join Sabi Mami in apricot collecting. She makes the best apricot wine. But for now, Chachi ji, I too am excited to listen to your stories of the environment.
But what shall we talk about today? I know what. Yesterday, you wanted to know all about green careers, Tara. There is yet another very important green career you could think of taking up. It is the role of green governance.
What is green governance?
Environmental governance means laying down of rules and regulations for all the countries throughout the world by a governing body like the United Nations to ensure that all the biomes as well as the biodiversity within would thrive.
क्या बात है?
The rules ensure a sustainable approach to our resources. They ensure protection and conservation of our habitats and the biodiversity in them. Also, these rules cover long-term projects for the revival and restoration of any degraded natural resources.
You mean environmental governance rules over the whole world and make sure no one damages the Mother Earth.
Bilkul sahi.
But isn't that a very big responsibility? Aren't there already many such rules by nations throughout the world?
There are. But in spite of that, there are so many catastrophes to our environment from time to time.
Maybe, Tara, after hearing out Charu Chachi on environmental governance, you may think of some other laws that would help our planet even better. See, even Polly is agreeing.
I would love to listen to all the environmental governance that the world is already supposed to be following. Charu Chachi, please.
Well, to give you an idea, there are some global agreements that deal with air and water pollution. If the quality of the river water here, for instance, gets deteriorated, it would also affect people in other states through which the river flows.
And then, when the river ultimately flows into the sea, then it will pollute the sea too. And the ocean currents would carry the polluted water miles away to another country's coastline.
Shabash, Tara. You are so quick to understand and perceive things. I would never have thought of all that.
You hit the nail on the head. Environmental governance is for the betterment and protection of the entire globe.
What about birds that migrate, crossing miles of ocean and land? All the countries that come in their route should ensure that it is safe for them to fly across if the landscape has changed, even in one country on their route, owing to deforestation. It may confuse the birds as to which directions they should take.
You are so right, my dear Tara. I hadn't even thought of that. This is the reason I feel you should know all about environmental governance. Who knows, you may in the future come up with some brilliant ways of saving our planet by implementing some novel concepts.
Now even my sleepy brains have awakened. It is important that for issues such as climate change and ozone depletion from our atmosphere, all countries should strive together to face the challenge with the help of some environmental rules. Even if you think a problem is only a problem in one country, it might be regulated by an international agreement because it is a problem that affects everyone.
Ah, now you deserve a pat on the back, Yontan. You spoke very wisely. Getting on with green governance. In recent times, a very interesting concept has sprung up called the Corporate Social Responsibility or CSR. It is a law that requires an obligation from big corporations to utilize 2% of their net profit in the past 3 years towards CSR, towards the betterment of society and for the protection of the environment.
When exactly did CSR come into play?
In India, it was implemented on 1st April 2014.
Doesn't the CSR also give a good name to those companies that follow it?
Yes, customers will be more likely to do business with brands that they think are more moral.
You are both right. CSR has become a buzzword or a fashion in businesses and an important part of the public relations of a company. But there are some companies who sincerely believe in doing good for mankind and for our planet.
Does the CSR help the corporates too? In what way do they benefit?
Indeed, they too benefit. Their brand name becomes popular, which brings about more sales. And if they are using eco-friendly methods, such as allowing natural light into their buildings in place of electricity, then their cost of maintenance too can come down.
So, CSR does help to build a better image and reputation of the company.
By the way, Yontan, I am proud to see all the eco-friendly ways you use in your hotel. You use solar energy, your hotel building is lit to a great extent by natural light, and you even have a water treatment plant to recycle the wastewater. Shabash!
I do not make such a huge profit at my hotel, but still, I feel I owe my responsibility to Mother Nature and its protection.
And you do it because you sincerely care for our planet, not just to build up a name. Charu Chachi, is the CSR only meant for the protection of the environment?
Good question. There are many other issues too, Tara, like for instance, promoting education, eradicating hunger and poverty.
What about bringing about improved infrastructure in rural areas like toilets? Gulab Mamu in our school told us that at one time he and the others in his village did not have a toilet in their homes. They had to go out in the fields, which much later every one of them was given the money through the CSR of a company to make a toilet in their house.
Very true. Also, another very important issue that big companies take care of under CSR is to preserve national heritage, art and culture.
And what about helping veterans in the armed forces and war widows and their families?
Yes, that too. There is an interesting case study of a big corporate that brought about a CSR marvel.
What is that? Do tell us the story, Charu Chachi.
The Tata Chemicals Company went all out to save the whale shark along the coasts of Gujarat. This gentle giant was the first fish to enjoy the same kind of concern and protection as is given to the tiger, lion, and elephant.
Sachi, how did they manage to do it?
In 2004, they partnered with the Wildlife Trust of India, the Gujarat State Forest Department, and the International Fund for Animal Welfare to launch the Save the Whale Shark campaign.
Why were the whale sharks under the threat?
There was once a huge demand for whale shark meat, oil, and fins.
Were the Tatas and other organizations successful in putting an end to this demand?
Yes, they successfully rescued and released 813 whale sharks. It wasn't easy. They had to first study the fish's habitat, map their migration route, and even study their life cycle to get a better understanding.
This is such good news. But coming back to environmental governance, what are the other laws that have been imposed across the globe, Charu Chachi?
I came across this booklet in my hotel library, which mentions about certain projects involving decades by the United Nations. It seems to be related to environmental governance.
This is just what I wanted to discuss. This booklet is very valuable. It has all the decade projects that the United Nations has declared.
What is this decades all about, Charu Chachi?
The UN earmarks a period of 10 years for the completion of certain projects that concern the environment globally, or for bringing about awareness of important issues that affect all the countries.
Both Polly and I are confused. Can you please explain all this, Charu Chachi?
For instance, the decade 2021 to 2030 was declared the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. It intends to dramatically repair degraded and devastated ecosystems. This can indirectly help combat climate change by absorbing huge amounts of greenhouse gases and also ensure food security, water availability, and biodiversity to all.
It would be so wonderful if by 2030 all those barren degraded lands get rewilded.
2021 to 2030 has also been declared as the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. The vision for this decade is to carry out research in ocean science to understand this vast biome better for the purpose of sustainable fishing and also to resolve problems like ocean acidification and sea level rising.
I suppose this would also include the noise pollution of oceans. We had learned about it in our school. The noise produced by our motorboats, ships, and drilling machines disturb dolphins and whales that communicate with each other over vast distances in the sea.
Besides oceans and ecosystems, the United Nations has long been concerned about the worldwide issue caused by unsafe drinking water and sanitation and the increasing demands on the world's water resources to meet human needs.
Is there a decade project for safe and sustainable water availability too?
Yes, the decade 2018 to 2028 was declared as Decade for Action on Water for Sustainable Development. The Water Action Decade will also speed up efforts to address water-related issues such as inadequate access to safe drinking water and sanitation, increased pressure on water resources and ecosystems, and an increased risk of drought and flooding.
Did you hear that, Polly? Polly can understand what we are talking about. Even Master G was telling us that if we don't use water with care, there could be a war over water in the near future.
There is yet another decade mentioned here. The United Nations General Assembly unanimously named the decade 2014 to 2024 as the decade of sustainable energy for all, highlighting the importance of energy challenges.
Energy too is such an important resource. We need energy in the form of electricity. We need energy to travel, energy to cook our food, and even factories need energy to run. With so much demand for energy, how can our planet cope up?
That is why this forum is intended to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency worldwide. Oh, this booklet also mentions about CAMPA.
So many new terms and laws I got to learn about today. Now, what is this CAMPA? Does it have anything to do on camps?
No, Tara, it is another aspect of environmental governance. CAMPA is the acronym for Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management and Planning Authority.
Woo! That is quite a mouthful. Did you hear that, Polly? And does it have anything to do with the regrowing of forests?
In simpler words, when forest land has to be compulsorily used for other purposes such as construction of dams, bridges, building of roads and railways, then CAMPA ensures that as a compensation for this biodiversity loss, afforestation is carried out on an equal area of land elsewhere.
That is a very good idea. But before the forest land is used for any other purpose, don't the people concerned have to apply for permission to do so?
Oh yes, it is quite a long procedure. They have to apply for forest clearance from the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change. Earlier, this compensatory afforestation was often avoided. Environmentalists then approached the Supreme Court. The Honorable Supreme Court ensured that CAMPA was strictly followed.
But Charu Chachi, what if the afforestation is done with the wrong type of trees?
Smart question, Tara. This has happened quite often. Instead of afforestation with the original native species, exotic species have been planted, like for instance the Gando bawal or Prosopis juliflora. This invasive species has now become a mounting threat to even the existing ecosystem.
Oh no!
It also says here in this book that the afforestation land should be contiguous to the deforested land so that it is easier for forest officials to manage it.
I just thought of something. What about disaster management, Charu Chachi? Are there some rules that have to be followed under environmental governance that take care of disaster management?
Yes, there are certainly quite a few rules laid down for coping up with disaster management. But I now pass on the stage to you, Tara. What if you were an official in charge of environmental governance? What would be the rules you would formulate? Tara takes up the challenge that Charu Chachi put to her. She sits in Yontan Mama's hotel garden under an apricot tree and jots down several rules in the form of a rap song.
A chemical leak, flash floods or cyclones, disasters we can win over and wisely tackle. The first instruction would be not to panic, evacuate into shelters, but don't forget the aged. Don't forget the disabled who are unable to flee. They may stay in closed rooms or shelters, please. These are situations when it's one for all and all for one. Care for yourself but also help everyone. Call up 100 101018. Numbers of emergencies. Rumors from spreading, always please refrain. Use your own discretion the situation to gauge. Better safe than sorry is what they say. Around units that produce hazardous stuff don't stay. Prepare a home emergency first aid kit with medicines, documents and valuables. A few precautions and a few do's and don'ts, if rigidly followed, harm from disasters won't ever come your way. Yay, yay!